That'd be a bad picture.
Hey, who's here?
Carl Tubman.
There you are.
You want to go on down to the bottom floor? Mr. Levin?
Let's get our speakers.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Wait till the siren is finished. Laura?
Yes, ma'am. You can take a step down.
You gotta get me down.
Here's a speaker.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Laura, I'm calling Helene. Laura Savage.
Laura Savage.
Laura Savage, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last week, when we sent out the notice for this meeting today, it was thought that we would be there to listen to the voices of those who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own, to listen to women, to veterans, to heads of families who are hoping that Congress would pass the extension of unemployment insurance. The bill has already passed the Senate in a bipartisan way. We invited you to a room in the Rayburn building. This morning, the Republican majority told us that for the purpose of talking about unemployment insurance extension, we no longer had access to the room. Perhaps we thought we would cancel the meeting. Instead, we have taken to the steps of the Capitol. The purpose of that meeting was to listen to these voices to whom the Republicans have turned a deaf ear. They are invisible to the Republicans. The Republicans are indifferent to their needs, but we want to give voice to them. We thought it would be in the Rayburn building. It is now on the steps of the Capitol, and I want to thank the National Employment Law Project and the Philadelphia Unemployment Law Project for helping us bring folks together. It is now my privilege to introduce one of our very special guests, Helen Laura Savage, to tell her story. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story and to lend my voice to the effort to restore federal unemployment insurance for the more than 2.5 million of us who have been cut off from that critical lifeline. My name is Helene Laura Savage. I'm 52 years old, and I'm from Saratoga, Pennsylvania. I was laid off last spring when my longtime job as an environmental health and safety officer for my company was outsourced. I have experience in my field. I hold a degree in physics, and I'm a proud, honorably discharged veteran of the United States Air Force. Despite having a competitive resume, a professional portfolio, a successful history of employment, and a depth of technical and professional experience, I'm still looking for work. My job search is methodical, and unlike many other people I know of, I do get callbacks and interviews. I've been applying for jobs in my specialized field, as well as for jobs in areas for which I have prior experience too, including facilities and fleet management, and even administrative positions. I've sent out 229 resumes for specific job postings, and I've had 26 interviews, and still no job. My regular state unemployment benefits ran out at the end of December, precisely when the federal emergency unemployment compensation program was allowed to expire. I was appalled at the time to see your attempts to renew federal jobless aid callously dismissed and rejected. Since then, I've been horrified to witness the delays, obstruction, and petty posturing that has kept federal EUC from being restored, even as the toll continues to mount of those being abandoned. The ray of hope provided by the Senate passage finally in early April of a bipartisan paid-for temporary extension is one that would be crushed if House Republican leaders refuse to bring it up for vote in this chamber. My husband and I are fortunate because he is still working. However, since I was the primary income, his salary alone can't cover our mortgage or other necessities. Unemployment benefits were our lifeline. When they were cut off at 6 months, we and millions of other families began sinking fast. During the first 3 months of this year, we depleted all of our savings just to make ends meet. Everything that I worked in terms of savings is now gone. We borrowed from my elderly mother-in-law to make the mortgage payments for April and May, but that's it. Without a renewal of federal jobless aid or a new job, by the end of May, we're done. We'll have nothing to make the mortgage and we'll lose our home. What we've worked so hard for, our American dream, has turned into a nightmare. And we realize that there are many, many people, through no fault of their own, who are in far more dire circumstances than we are, especially those with children and no spouses who now have been suffering with no income whatsoever. And all because of Congress's failure so far to restore federal unemployment benefits. I want you and all the members of the House to hear my story and reflect on the fact that restoring federal EUC would help relieve a tremendous amount of hardship for me and millions of others. Let democracy work. With a vote in the House on the Senate-passed bill, the time for excuses is over. Thank you.
Good job.
Let democracy
Very
work.
good job.
Let democracy work.
Thank you very much, Helen. Well said. This morning, there was a room available for some of the citizens of our country to come to Washington and their capital, with their office building and their office, and tell their story. They cut us off. They tried to silence the voices of those who are in deep pain because of Republican failures, because of Republican ignoring the pain of so many people in America. We're raising awareness today about an issue that has adversely impacted over 2.5 million Americans, just a few of whom wanted to speak today in their capital. The sudden and unnecessary cutoff of emergency unemployment insurance was another consequence of Republicans' failed leadership and do-nothing agenda. As long as Congress fails to restore emergency unemployment insurance, another 72,000 people per week will join the ranks of those whom we listen to today. I'm not happy to introduce, I'm proud to introduce, but not happy, because Letice Brown has been unemployed since early last fall and lost her unemployment insurance in mid-March. Letice Brown, a victim of the ignoring of the people's pain by the Republican leadership. Letice, thank you very much for being here. Letice Brown.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story with you. My name is Letice Brown. I am originally from York, Pennsylvania, and currently living in Fort Washington, Maryland. I am a hard-working young woman with a bachelor's degree from Penn State University in geography and also a master's in administration of justice and security from the University of Phoenix. Last year, I was in my 6th year of a job working as a geographic information systems tech for a contractor within the United States Census Bureau. I was happy and loved my work and felt like I was getting somewhere and on my way. So on September 1st, my boyfriend and I moved into our first apartment together. 6 days later, we celebrated my 30th birthday. 1 week after that, my world was turned upside down. With less than 24 hours notice, I was let go, among with 10 others, which was half of our 22-person GIS team. We were told it was because the contractor had to drastically cut back under pressure from budget cuts and sequestration. I have never been unemployed before, and believe me, if you haven't been unemployed, you have no idea what it's like, especially in a tough job market. We did 3 things right away. First, we cut back on whatever and wherever we could. We had no Thanksgiving. We had no Christmas. Second, I began receiving my unemployment insurance, which, while not enough to meet all our needs, at least we were able to make do. My boyfriend works as an airline food service delivery driver, but they are paid so little that it was only with the UI benefits that we were able to keep up with the rent payments. And third, I launched myself into an intense search for work all day, every day, and I'm still looking. I thought with my technical experience, both a bachelor's and a master's degree, it wouldn't take long to find a new job. I had not a single interview in the first 4 months of looking. Right now, I have over 300 applications out for specific job postings in places all over the East Coast, and have had only a couple of interviews, including one in Florida that did not pan out, for which I had to use my own tax refund money to pay for the travel expenses. I've been told that by some of the recruiters that they have at least 100 qualified applicants for every one open position. It doesn't take much to figure out that for a lot of us, it's going to take longer than 6 months to find a new job. But 6 months of unemployment benefits is all that I received. My regular state unemployment ran out in March. Without the support of federal jobless aid, I've not only depleted all of my meager savings, but have been forced to draw cash against my credit card to keep up with last month's rent and car payments. Now, there's only $500 left to draw on, and even that still is going to leave us a few $100s short for May 1st rent. My car, phone, and internet, which I depend on for my job search, are also at risk, not to mention the possibility of defaulting on one of my federal student loans. I know that the Senate has passed a bipartisan temporary compromise renewal of federal unemployment insurance, and that it's been awaiting action here in the House. I think I speak for at least 2.5 million Americans like myself who have been cut off from this vital lifeline while we continue to look for work. This isn't about politics, it's about right and wrong. Restoring federal unemployment insurance is the right thing to do. The members of the House deserve a vote, and so do we. Please don't turn your backs on us. Don't let us down. Thank you.
Don't turn your back on us. That's what the American people are saying, Latisse, all over this country. I want to introduce another young man from Maryland. He's from Boonesboro in the western part of our state, represented by John Delaney, who is fighting for unemployment insurance. He began his career while in the Army National Guard. Unfortunately, he lost his job in June of 2013 at a civil engineering and environmental firm. His state unemployment insurance ran out in 2014. We need to hear his story. Kevin?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. A little nervous. My name's Kevin McCarthy. I'm a 38-year-old married father of two. I have two amazing teenage daughters that I love to death, and I currently live in Boonesboro, Maryland. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to work. I watched my mom and my grandmother work hard to provide for me and my siblings. So I took a job at 12 years old delivering newspapers. I kept that for 4 years until I was legally allowed to work in an establishment and actually get paid by check. I was excited. It was great. At the age of 17, though, coming from a low-income family, I needed to find a way to pay for college, so I joined the National Guard, and I was proud to do so. I served for 6 years, much to the chagrin of my parents, who were both Marines. While in the National Guard, I was able to start my career in the manufacturing industry and continued that for several years, working my way into the industry of construction. My career arc has always been constant with jobs in both of those fields, and I've always gotten rave reviews from my employers. Imagine my surprise when May 20th, 2013, my current employer called me into the office and told me that my position had been eliminated because they were having a bad year. At first, I wasn't terribly excited about it because I have a good resume. I can get a job, no problem. But after 3 months, with sending out several resumes a week and no callbacks, I started to worry. I was depending on these benefits much more than I ever thought I'd have to. This is the first time I had to as well. My wife, though, was good enough to get a job, and she works hard. And with those unemployment benefits, we were able to make do by cutting back on everything, including Christmas for my 2 daughters. My unemployment benefits read out February 9th of 2014. When I received the letter, I was shocked because I thought by that point, Congress would have passed the extension for the federal benefits. I had to call my wife, and I cried. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was shocked. I panicked, kind of like I'm doing right now. While my wife works, she only gets 30 hours a week, and working in a bakery, it doesn't pay that much. So we're barely making ends meet. With a little bit of assistance from the state of Maryland, we're able to get by. But about a month ago, my oldest daughter took an extreme measure because she felt like she was a burden to her family because we've been struggling. She watched her father work hard, and he couldn't find a job. How do I explain that to them? There is no explanation except that we're being let down by the people we elected into office. I'm sorry. You have no idea how soul-crushing it is to listen to your daughter tell you she's a burden. A burden. I know I'm not the only family suffering. There are over 2.5 million, like you've heard already, and it's unnecessary. This could be eliminated if democracy was allowed to work. Unfortunately, petty differences are keeping that from happening. I hope that me taking the time to tell my story, along with everybody else that's told their story today so far, I hope this changes some people's minds and they bring this up to vote. Let democracy do its job. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. Your daughter's got to be very proud of you today. You're speaking for millions of Americans that have been cut off just as you have, and thank you so much for being here. All across this country, for millions of Americans, their top priorities are 2 very simple things: a job that pays well enough for them to take care of their family, and some assurance that their financial security will be protected when they fall upon hard times through no fault of their own. No one here would dispute that we need to be doing more to invest in our economy and create new jobs, especially jobs with a fair wage. But we also need to extend long-term unemployment insurance to help folks who are still out of work and struggling to find a new job, who are looking day in and day out. We are here today because Congress needs to hear from these 3 million Americans who worked hard and played by the rules, as you have just heard now from our first people to testify. And they still lost their jobs, and they're still looking for the new one. And we need to be acting on what we hear. The Senate voted last month for a bipartisan basis to extend unemployment insurance. Today, we're appealing to our Republican colleagues to allow a vote on the House floor so that we can restore this vital lifeline to these hardworking Americans that we're hearing from today, and for the millions of Americans that they represent, the families that they represent, the children that they represent, as they go into the job market every day trying to restore that portion of the American dream for them and their families. I'm honored to introduce Kimberly Chanley from Pennsylvania. Kimberly? Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Kimberly Chanley. I live in Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania. I am 53 years old, and I'm a college-educated single parent of a 17-year-old son. I began working in junior high school as a paper carrier and continued to work part-time throughout high school and college, at times working 2 jobs to pay for my college tuition. I started my professional career in sales and marketing in 1984 within the life science research industry. I was steadily employed for the last 30 years. I have built a solid reputation as a sales and marketing professional and have independently supported myself and my son with this career. In June of 2013, my company reorganized and my position was eliminated. I lost health benefits for both my son and myself. My unemployment insurance benefits have ended as of January of 2014. I have been living off what was supposed to be my retirement savings. I do not have a pension plan to rely on when I retire. I applied for the Affordable Care Act for health insurance and fell into the unemployed loophole. I was not eligible because I made too little money, because the state of Pennsylvania did not expand Medicaid for the long-term unemployed. So there is no affordable insurance program for me. The longer I stay unemployed, my Social Security benefits will also decline in my retirement. I have been aggressively looking for full-time employment. I am working with an outplacement firm, the Ayers Group. I am working with headhunters in my profession. I use LinkedIn to search for job openings. I network with other professionals. I am on many job sites on the internet. I am either too old, overqualified, or the companies hire from within by expanding position responsibilities to avoid adding headcount. For the first time in my life, I could not pay my electric bill and have looked to PICO for assistance. My 17-year-old son is on the free lunch program at school, and he has just been accepted onto Medicaid. This came just in time because earlier this month he had to have emergency lung surgery. This would have wiped me out. I was living and working the American dream until June of 2013. What is going to happen to me now and in the future if I use all my retirement savings to live? These are the questions that keep me up at night. How will I pay my mortgage? Where will my son and I live? How will I feed him and myself? How will I get medical care? How will my son go to college? I want to work. I am ready, willing, and able to take on a professional position equivalent or comparable to what I was doing and earning. I have done everything right and played by the rules. And through no fault of my own, I'm on the brink of losing everything I have worked my entire life. Please come to some compromise to extend the unemployment benefits for hardworking Americans like myself who have played according to the rules and believe in America. Thank you for your time.
Well, you've heard some heartbreaking stories. The question is whether the Republicans behind us will listen. I may want to make one important point. This situation today is different than before. Never before has there been such a high percentage of the unemployed who are long-term unemployed. Never before. More than 1/3 of the unemployed in this country are long-term unemployed. And never, never before has this government cut off unemployment benefits for the long-term unemployed in this way. And they're from all walks of life. And the estimate is if this institution does not act, the number will reach 4.9 million people who will be cut off from their unemployment insurance. We need to take to heart the heartbreaking stories. People come from all walks of life, and one of them is now a resident of Ohio, having moved from Michigan, Errol Torres.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this time to share our story with you. My name is Errol Torres. I'm 38 years old. I live in Sheffield, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, with my wife of 15 years, Stephanie, and our 6 wonderful children. Stephanie is a stay-at-home mom, and up until June of 2013, I was a sales manager in the flooring industry. We have been blessed to raise our children, who range in age from 14 to 1.5 years old, in a terrific community, surrounded by wonderful friends and an incredible family. Those friends and family have lent us both emotional and financial support as we have faced some tumultuous times during this economic downturn. In 2009, after 12 years of corporate sales, I cashed in our retirement and fulfilled a lifelong dream by opening my own flooring and remodeling business. Sales grew quickly, but unfortunately our expenses grew faster, and we ended up leveraging our house and savings to shore up the business. In 2012, after suffering loss on a large construction project, we were forced to close our doors and file bankruptcy. This was devastating to me and my family, but luckily I was able to quickly re-enter corporate sales. My new position came with one downside. I would need to sign a non-compete agreement. I wasn't in the position to negotiate, so I signed the agreement with the hope that I would never have to compete because I would never lose my job and remain employed. Unfortunately, on June 13th, 2013, after just 9 months, my employer decided to let me go with no warning and enforce their non-compete. We were left with no income, no insurance, no savings, and no legal ability to seek work in my field of expertise for 2 years. For the first time in my 25 years of working life, I needed unemployment. We were in the middle of being reviewed for a loan modification for our house, and maintaining income was critical. And in transitioning to a new field, and I knew transitioning to a new field would take time. I received state unemployment benefits from June 13th to December 16th, 2013, when I received a letter that all my benefits would be ending right before Christmas. During the past 10 months of my unemployment, I have applied for nearly 200 jobs, and now that number has succeeded since I wrote this. And I've been told I've overqualified, underqualified, underpaid, overpaid, undereducated, overeducated, inexperienced. At first, I had hopes of making somewhat near what I had made before, but I soon found outside my field I was worth considerably less, and it was a buyer's market for labor. Without the EUC extension, we were left with the choice of either signing a deed in lieu and selling our house back to the bank or facing foreclosure. So on February 27th, for $4,000, we sold our $175,000 house back to the bank. We had already gone down to one car and made so many other cutbacks in our lifestyle, and now we were no longer homeowners. Without the EUC, we have had no income. At first, we got by on our tax return and selling items, but to make last month's rent, I had to borrow from my dad, who's retired. If I don't find work soon, I may have to consider trying to look out of state and possibly be separated from my family for a time. But I hold out hope that this Congress will act with courage and compassion and extend the EUC program. There are many others out there like me that have special circumstances that prevent them from quickly finding a job, despite their best efforts, as we've heard through all these stories, and diligence. And I pray that they will do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The national economy lost $5 billion because of the lapse of unemployment insurance the first 3 months. But we're here today to tell the personal stories that reflect those stories of millions of Americans. And another person with her story is Carmen Sanchez from Philadelphia.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Carmen Sanchez. I'm a single 52-year-old mother of twin adult daughters. I'm from Philadelphia. I have worked all my adult life with the exception of a 2-year break following the birth of my premature twins. I worked for 12 and a half years for Trans World Airlines, TWA, until they went out of business. I collected unemployment for approximately 5 months before I found another job with Sato Travel. After being employed with Sato for 13 years, the company closed the field office I worked out of, and I was left without. It has been 1 year since I was laid off, and I have not had any income since December 28, 2013. I've applied for so many jobs that I've lost track of the number. I've taken the civil service test for so many positions, only to be told that I'm on a waiting list, and they'll let me know if something comes up. I received shut-off notice for all of my utility bills and do not have money to pay the rent. I had to apply for food stamps so I could at least have food to eat. I have been relying on my elderly mother to give me car fare and pocket money just to be able to go out and look for work. I had to stop driving the car because I could no longer afford the insurance. I never imagined that finding a job would be this difficult. I went to a crisis center last week to apply for help to stop my water from being shut off, but was denied because I do not have an income. In order to qualify for the reduced rate programs that are offered to low-income residents, you must have an income. I lay awake at night wondering how I'm going to pay my rent and what day the utilities will be shut off. The owner of the house I'm renting has been patient and understanding, but she has financial obligations to meet, so I know it's only a matter of time before I'm evicted. I'm urging Congress to pass a bill to reinstate emergency unemployment benefits. The lives of many Americans are in peril. We want jobs, and we'll keep looking until we find one. We are losing our homes, our dignity, and our trust in a nation who proclaimed the American dream was attainable to all of its citizens. Please give the long-term unemployed back the lifeline that was so cruelly taken away from us last December. We're not asking for years of benefits, but just enough to keep us afloat while we continue to search for jobs.
There are 2.8 million Americans, hardworking Americans, that stand to lose everything that they've worked for, everything that they've spent their lives building, because the Republican leadership in Congress is unwilling to take up a bill that would not increase the deficit, but that would save pain, like the pain that we're hearing about today from taking place. These are hardworking Americans. And while to the Republican leadership, they may be invisible, they won't be silenced. We tried to hold a hearing today, and we were told no, that the People's House was not open to the people who wanted to tell their stories about how they've lost their jobs and stand to lose everything. This is something that the government, the federal government, that the Congress can do something about. Some of the questions we face are really complicated. This one's simple. Take up this bill. It's been passed by the Senate. The president will sign it. A majority of Congress would support it. Take up this bill. That's all we need to do. We need, and the people need, a vote. They may be invisible to the Republican leadership, but they won't be silenced. Their stories will be told. And I want to introduce one of them. From Baltimore, Maryland, one of the Americans who works hard every day to try to find work, Jean Keene. Jean?
Hello, thank you for being here today. My name is Jean Keene. I'm 52 from Baltimore, Maryland, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to share my story. In the fall of 1983, I was married with a new baby girl, and during that time, my husband lost his job at U.S. Steel, with tens of thousands of other workers when the mill shut down in Warren and the Ohio Steel Valley. We had to relocate, let go of our home, sold everything we owned, and with some help from my father, tried to start over in a new state. But this move turned out to be very difficult. Economic stress and financial strain divided our little family, and by 1998, my marriage was over. In time, my ex-husband's job loss had brought on his depression, from which he never fully recovered. In 2007, he passed away. The year my marriage ended, I moved to Baltimore, went to college, had a second child, found work, raised both of my children on my own for the most part. I bought a home while making a modest middle-income salary. In 2006, I went to work for a successful manufacturing company, serving as the plant manager's accounting and human resource coordinator. Over the years, the company had weathered up and down business cycles well, and even when the housing market crashed, things seemed fine. Then in 2011, the company's assets were purchased by a larger firm. They began to close the plant bit by bit. In 2012, my plant manager, the receiving manager, the purchasing manager, and my son, who also worked at the plant with me, were the first to be let go. I was relocated to a different department to continue the merger and transition, and then I was laid off in May of 2013. I looked for work. I accepted a job doing an accounts payable for a small company, but long after I started, they told me I was overqualified and gave the job to a young friend of the family. I've heard that term, overqualified, too many times to count during my 9-month job search. I had lost my severance from my former employer, and I filed for and began receiving regular state unemployment insurance, which helped me keep up with my bills. I continued to look for work during the day and attend college classes at night to further my skills and education. I've had my resume professionally prepared. It's been reviewed by recruiters and academic experts, in addition to scores of networking referrals and contacts with recruiters. I have applied for more than 350 positions. I have had 60 phone interviews and 22 in-person interviews, and I've had absolutely no job offers. My daughter and her 5-year-old autistic son were forced by the tough economy to move back in with me and my son. She received some assistance for her child, and my son has occasionally found part-time temporary work, but nothing steady full-time. The first week of February, my state unemployment benefits ran out. With no federal extension of emergency unemployment compensation, we've been able to feed ourselves with SNAP benefits, but could not keep up with the mortgage payments, utilities, or other bills. I have now lost my phone and internet service, which of course makes looking for work even harder than it already was. I am now on the verge of losing my home, the only protection I have for myself and my family. While all of this was happening to me, my former plant manager was so devastated by the combination of his own loss at the age of 60, the layoffs of all 60 of his former co-workers at the plant, many of whom had worked there for decades, the loss of his home to foreclosure, that he became severely depressed and experienced a mental and emotional breakdown, knowing that so many of his former co-workers were cut off from federal jobless aid and facing destitution. For this good man with a master's degree, a fine husband and family man and friend to many of us, the stress was too much. He suffered a stroke, and in February he died. I happen to be an epileptic, and I too am depressed with a feeling of helplessness, but I'm not going to beg for anything. I am requesting that you reinstate the federal extension of emergency unemployment compensation and that you do so immediately. I also ask that you adopt legislative measures. To prevent discrimination against the long-term unemployed in the job market, and that you remove unfair barriers to the employment based on credit screening for those who have been unable to pay their bills. Yes. And lastly, Congress, I ask that you pass real job creation with serious investments in an infrastructure and jobs across the board to boost the economy so I do not lose any of my coworkers, my families, or my friends. As this situation becomes more desperate, so do the people who are enveloped in it. Thank you for your time.
The voices that we have heard this afternoon represent hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of Americans who are in a similar situation. Unfortunately, our Republican colleagues in the Congress are in denial about this situation. When I ask them, why don't you give us a vote, because the votes are there to pass the extension of unemployment benefits. They say They say these people are not looking for work, so we're not going to give them this extension. They are in denial. In fact, they don't even want to hear the truth. That's why they kicked us out of the Rayburn room and wouldn't let these stories be told in the People's House on the Capitol Hill. But as we have noticed, we've come to the steps of the Capitol so that the world can hear the stories, not only of their own stories, but representative of so many others. They have spoken so eloquently. I want to thank them. I want to thank all of my colleagues who join us here and are helping to co-sponsor the legislation that would give us a vote. That's all we're asking for. Mr. Speaker, give us a vote. Give us a vote. Give us a vote. Thank you all very much.